So our next guest in our interview series about the Sonicstate compilation album is the one and only Mr. Marc Doty. Hello, Marc.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
It's great to be here.
Yay! Great. So your song, wow, is quite an epic. Can you tell us, is this a new song? Did you write it for this project, or does it date back from another time?
It's funny. I actually thought, I have a lot of songs that I've never done anything with, and they're just sitting around. And I thought, I should dig through and find one that's really cool, and then sort of spruce it up a little bit. But then I was like, I have not written a song a song with vocals. I've written tremendous amounts of music, but I've not written an actual song for many years. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to force myself to write a song for this project and have vocals in it for the first time in a decade.
Excellent. So, straight away, one of the things that I find about the song is the kind of drums being almost just at the back of things. Are they real drums? They certainly sound like real drums. And who played them?
Okay, so I really love real drums, and my theory has always been that drums sound best in the environment in which they are. It's not the actual drum sound is relatively unimportant compared to what happens to the drum sound in the room. So, and this is funny, I had recently someone had left a comment on a really old YouTube video of mine that was a song that I had done in this comedy show that I used to be in. And I recorded the drums for that song in a school band room on a school drum set. I don't know if they're the same in the UK, but school band rooms in America are just big, boomy spaces, and the drums are usually beat almost to death, but they have this really messy, great sound. And so I single mic recorded myself playing those drums, and I used them in this song. I'm a creative drummer, but my timing is not precise. So the original, and you can hear the original, it's a song called, I think, The Mirror, on my YouTube channel. You can hear how actually messed up the original drums are. They're so sloppy timing wise, and sloppy in every other way as well. But I realized I could, now that I have computer technology as opposed to back then, I really didn't, I could clean it up. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take those cool drums that I've always loved. I'm going to tighten up the timing a little bit so they don't sound as inept as they are, and just use that as the basis for this song. So that's where those drums came from.
Excellent. Okay, that's a great story. So yeah, because there is something quite contemporary, funnily enough, about it. There is a little bit of a backlash against super tight things. So actually kind of going super loose makes it feel kind of on the money. So you were, so what did you do? Did you have, so the song structure, was that a new song, or have you taken an old song and done a new version of it? Or is this where have the chords come from, for instance?
Oh, they're all totally new. The drums are the only remnants of that original song. And then I took them, the finished product of the tightening, and they sort of implied a structure in themselves. Originally, I was going to insert a chorus because I came up with this, the original chords to the song, I came up with as a chorus. And I wanted the chorus to be double time because the song's about the passage of time. So I wanted to have the chorus just jarringly jump into, double time compared to the verse. And so actually at the end, that weird little songlet that exists at the end, that's the music for the original chorus. And those drums are programmed and processed by the landscape stereo field. I don't know if you've ever seen the landscape stereo field, but it makes drum.
Go on, tell us more.
It basically, I don't know how it works, but it has all these connections and it has all of these gold-plated contacts.
I thought so.
And as you touch the contacts, different connections are made, and it does oscillations and ring modulations and massive distortion, and it does all kinds of things. And as you mess with it, you start to find places where you like the things that happen. And then you can perform distortion as if the distortion is a musical instrument in itself.
That's super cool.
And I found that it's really fun with drums because I like my drums, as you might be able to tell from the song, very messy and bashy and intense and overdriven. And so this thing will take the relatively metric and clean drums that I recorded on the Korg Triton, which is the drums in that part are just programmed drums, but it gives them a performance aspect that would be lacking if I just used the programmed sequence thing.
And that's not quantized then, because your performance is in free time, I guess.
Well, actually, the drums at the very end are quantized, but I perform them.
I meant, the performance on the landscaper, though. That aspect gives, so those changes that are happening and not on grid, that gives you the chance to sort of break away from the rigidity of the programming. Okay, that's cool. I was just understanding that. So, okay, so returning back to the sort of the main bulk of the song, then. I think just for a little bit of context, you have been a frontman in a band and been a sort of singer for many years, haven't you? But that's something. Can you tell us a little bit about your musical history regarding you as a singer?
It was my plan to be a rock star. So for after college, I basically, wrote a tremendous amount of music and performed it. And this was back in the days of sending in, a cassette to record labels and trying to trick them into liking what you do. And for years I performed trying to get things together. In 1997, I finally landed a manager and things started to sort of progress. There was a tiny amount of label interest. I released a CD. And that was really more electronic dance.
Was that under the Automatic Gainsay name?
No, it was at that time, my legal name was Terpsichore. I changed my name to Terpsichore, who is the muse of dance, because I wanted to do dance related electronic music in the 90s, as you do. And, but it just never coalesced. Even, I don't know, I'd love to blame my manager. Like, he dropped the ball, but it just never came to be. No. And then in the 2000s, I was in bands and played keyboard, and less tried to pursue like promoting my own sort of pop related music. And that's just basically where it's been since then.
Okay.
Automatic Gainsay started. I was in a band with a friend of mine in the early 2000s, and then we had a fight, and had this contentious situation. So I decided I was going to start a sort of They Might Be Giants-esque sort of band, and that's where the name Automatic Gainsay came from. That was the name of my band. And then when I started doing the synth demos for like Sonicstate, I just kept the name because it was the name of my channel. So, well,
let's just briefly talk about that, because your relationship with Sonicstate does extend back somewhat into the distance, doesn't it? Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes. Back in the olden times when it was like still like news groups and things, I basically just showed up and would say all the irritating things that I say now in larger areas. Back
roughly what years are we talking?
It started in 1997, and I think I started posting on Sonicstate in the early 2000s. And one point, how did that whole thing play out? I got contacted by Simon Power, who is also on this compilation and is a good friend of mine. And we started talking, and he had seen stuff that I had posted. And in about 2006, I think we started talking about it. I came to the UK, and they did some interviews about the Nova chord and some other thing. I can't really remember. Yeah. And then Nick was going to do the top 20 synths of all time. And he contacted me and said, yeah, can you create some content for this, top 20 synths about the Mini Moog? And I'm like, yeah. So my Mini Moog demonstration, my first demonstration in the style that I do demonstrations, was for Nick for that production. And it never really made it into the production. I mean, little bits of it did. But so then when YouTube happened, I joined YouTube and was posting videos of these songs I had recorded. And I asked Nick, hey, can I put this Mini Moog demonstration? Is it cool if I just post it on YouTube? And he's like, yeah. And so in a way, I mean, don't tell him I said this, but Nick's kind of responsible for everything that came after.
That's super cool. So obviously on your song then, let's just talk about the instrumentation on your song, because we've ascertained the drums are from this school kit then, and you used a lot of an existing performance, and then did you created a structure then from that drum performance and then wrote a song over it. Am I getting that right?
I've done this a couple of times in the past. Like, you can take drums from one song and then write a new song to those drums, which is fun. I mean, I've always wanted to do that with literally all of Ringo Starr's performances. But I just basically took those drums and laid them out. And then and the secret to this track, and I did this just to irritate Ty. It's all polybrute. All of the synthesizer sounds that you hear, the bass, any chords, anything other than vocoder that's a synthesizer, it's all polybrute.
Interesting.
And it's just so expressive. Like, it allows me, I'm kind of put off by, after all these many years of using synthesizers, I don't want to play like a bass line that's just a sawtooth, and it's that same sawtooth no matter what note you play, it's sawtooth whatever. With the polybrute, I was able to add variation, expressive variation over time, and it gives a more organic nature to the recorded instrument parts. And I'm like, I love synthesizers, but I love expressive acoustic instruments, and so I could kind of have the best of both worlds. And so that's basically what it all was.
And do you just print a performance straight to audio, or do you record the MIDI and then tweak with the MIDI? How does your workflow how does that workflow happen for you? There's a point at which everyone's going to hate me for saying this. I'm kind of done with quantized sequenced recordings. Because it's what everyone does, and it's so pervasive, and also repetition. And I love repetition, and it's a very powerful expressive tool. But I wanted it, and this is one of the reasons I grabbed those drums, because they're super inconsistent. Like, there's parts where the bass drum drops out and stuff. And so I wanted a more organic synthesizer experience. And so that was kind of the whole goal of what I was doing with that. So I would those are all, no synthesizer part in that whole thing is quantized. Those are all just performances. Right. Yeah. I mean, it really does come across with that kind of, almost like a kind of like not garage band software, but band playing in a garage or something. It's got a feeling of it being, like it being loose, and it feeling good with it being loose. It's as I mentioned, I think it's an antidote to, we've had like 30 years of very, very kind of grid-based music. So yeah, going off grid, I fully applaud that. So in terms of influences then, I mean, obviously this song it feels like very idiosyncratic to be in, one of, your music, but who would you say are your prime influences, and how maybe this song can represent some of that influence?
It's really interesting because the main influence for me, and I don't think this is evident in it at all, I don't think like musically, but when I heard David Bowie's Black Star, I really loved it because I listened to it and it was just like he did what he wanted. He didn't try and align with some sort of genre or studio technique, or although, you know, genre elements and studio techniques are in there, it really felt like he did what he wanted to do, what he thought sounded good. And for my whole past, I've always been like, okay, this is a Prince song, or this is a techno song, or this is an industrial song, so it has to obey these rules. In this, I just did what I wanted to. And it's very loose. And like, there's a bunch of mixing things as we were listening through it. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did you mix that so high? And it was because I like it. I wanted to hear that sound at that level. So there. David Bowie's recording inspired me in that way. As for this, I mean, I'm always sort of, there's some Beatles and ELO and stuff in there. I've played for a couple of friends. Ty actually brought up XTC, and I was like, XTC, really? Is there XTC in there? That's cool. And another friend of mine said he could hear some Roy Wood in there, and I'm like, really?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. I'll go with that.
So, which is cool. I mean, Roy's work with the Electric Light Orchestra was something I'm familiar with, but his solo work, less so. But yeah. And inclusion of a vocoder. I mean, I'm a vocoder junkie, but not so much in a robotic way, but more in an ELO sort of musical way. Also, there is a choir patch. I was going to bring this up. The choir patch that you largely hear through that's all polybrute and not vocoder. The vocoder are the spoken stuff, but just the choir parts are polybrute. You can do choir anyway.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you find with the polybrute, are you using the little kind of touche type expression device?
Every minute. Because I like to introduce variation in the timbre, consistent with more acoustic instruments. I like the variation.
Yeah, I mean, I have a touche here, and I love it. I swear by it because of it. For me, it connects my instrument sort of playing to electronic to the electronic sort of realm. So I've not actually played a polybrute, but my eyes immediately were drawn to that. It was like, yes. Yeah. So that's great to hear then that you're really kind of embracing that. What's that controller called? Just incidentally.
The Morphe.
The Morphe. Right.
Morphe.
Yeah. Nice.
Apparently.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, no, I'm all for expressivity in instruments. So that's that's an exciting development. So nice to hear it being used so effectively. So when you're working on songs or maybe instrumentals or whatever, and you're layering synths, how do you typically add more than you need and then pull back, or how does that workflow affect you?
I tend to take a sort of orchestral approach and sort of think of like, how full do I want this to be, or how sparse do I want this to be? And of course, if you're going to go for full, then I will aim for timbres that rest in certain frequency ranges, as you do with an orchestra. And so I'm usually very metric and very organized in what I do. I'm like, this needs something in this frequency range. It needs a melodic element, or I want a sound effect here or something. On this song, it was much more intuitive. And there's a middle section where there's just a whole bunch of weird synth shit going on. And I basically just went with it. I chose a timbre I liked, and I'm like, what would happen if I did this right here? Or what would happen if I did this? And it turned into this sort of like beautiful mess of just changes, and it really suited my overarching theme, which is just losing track of oneself as years pass. So I was like, yeah, it's all over the place, which is what it's like. So
I mean, like, there is a bit of a melancholic vibe to the song, and the vocal is definitely like holding that melancholy there. Do you then let that sort of feeling apply to the way you would approach the layering and texture writing?
Yes. I really wanted I wanted the song to be kind of disjointed and kind of blurry, because it all comes from this sort of concept I had where basically when you get to be my age, someday you'll understand, Gaz, when you get up this old.
I'm nearly there.
No, I just feel like there's been I've lived all of these different separate lives, and I'll remember a certain life and all the things that I believed then or was doing then, or the future that I foresaw back then. And it's not at all what happened. And so you get this sort of fracturing, like, was that me? And what happened to that life? Which the title of the song, Anamnesis, it's a psychological term for like false memories. And that's kind of what this felt like. So I wanted the song to have kind of this like kind of unsettled, eerie, kind of messy, meandering feel, because that's kind of, that's kind of how it feels.
Interesting. So actually it's quite interesting using such an evocative drum sound then, especially, given that the meaning there. So how do you know, what do you use to kind of give you an indicator that something is finished? When do you kind of go, that's it, I'm going to sign that off? What are the elements there that you're looking for?
That is a really interesting question. I'd like to say something more technical than like, it just feels like it's full, there's no more to put in there, but it varies depending on the focus, what the project's intention is. And this was self-indulgent. So, because it's for me, I'm just writing it for me, unlike, a product for somebody or a demonstration theme or something where it's like, this needs to have a purpose other than just what I want. But with this, as you do, there's a lot of moments where like with the chorus, I'm like, okay, this chorus is going to be double time and it's going to do this. And I had it in there. And then I was just like, what if I did the chorus in the same feel as the rest of the song? I don't know. Let's see what happens. I'm like, no, I like this better. And so a lot of the conclusions I came to in advance turned out not to suit the song. So I'm like, I guess this is doing something different. And that's kind of, it's intuitive for this song. It was totally intuitive. I'm like, this needs no more than what it has done.
Nice. So, I mean, that's a good example there of not being too precious then about your original ideas and being open to adapt it with, subsequent listens and being able to kind of recognize what is needed and not being too hung up about the stuff that you'd already done. I think is I think that's very important. That's something constant thing that I have to remind myself about. So, when you're saying this is indulgent, I really like you saying that and absolutely have every right to do that. Because the song takes its time to get where it wants to go, and it sort of does it totally on its own. It's not rushing to please. I think my song is just like, have some of this, and then have a load of this.
Flute? Is that a real flute?
Oh yeah.
In your song? That's who uses sax and flute in their song? I was very impressed with that. That was totally cool.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. But I mean, I think that's. I think it's great though, in with your song though, just that you can feel that you can tell the story that you want to tell, convey the emotions, and not give in to pressures to make it conform to to some kind of commercial idea. I think that does affect too many people. It makes their writing too boring. Because
this is the first time I've done this since I was very young. So, and it was hard. I have to admit, there were several times where I was listening through it. There's that weird thing, and I've never been able to. Tell me if you have this experience too. I'll be listening to something and I'll be like, "This is glorious. This is the coolest thing I have ever. This is groundbreaking. This is awesome." And then I'll come back to it and I'll be like, "This is shit. This is what was I thinking? Is this a joke? They're going to think I'm an idiot. I'm going to get made fun of for this." And I'm like, "But you thought it was great, and now you think it's stupid. What? Which is the one?" And I have to say with this, I just kind of said, "Mark, don't freak out about it. Trust your initial instinct and hope that it's the right one." And I've come back to a lot of the parts that I thought were terrible, and now I like them again. So listening through it at the top of this, I was like, "Oh my gosh, get ready, Mark. This might be just a terrible experience for you." But no, it actually does what I originally intended. And I know how weird it is, but I'm like, I made those weird choices.
You made those choices
on purpose.
Yeah. You made the bed, so now you got to sleep in it. Something, this is good. No, this is good. I think we need to hear more songs like this. I definitely would love to hear more. So I for one would be wholeheartedly encouraging you to do more. So speaking of the future, then, is there anything that that you've got coming up that you'd like to tell us about?
Like musically, I don't know. I have felt, I've felt sort of inspired by this, and I've been sort of laying down various musical ideas with the Polybrute. It's really easy, and the Hawken Continuum, which I can't get enough of. I'm constantly laying down concepts with that, and I feel like it's time for me to start getting back to what I do, which is write music. Luckily, I think the synthesizer industry is sort of helping me, because I don't know where I would go from here. I mean, I have all of the vintage analog synths I've ever wanted and all of the modern analog synths I've ever wanted. I can't really imagine that this analog obsession could possibly go any further than it already has. I mean, so now I kind of feel like, okay, now I can, move on to something different. And I think it's largely going to be outputting tremendous amounts of music.
Oh, that's great news. Yes. And, long may that last, because, I think you've proved yourself to be an extremely valuable member of the synth community. And I think we need to hear more music, really. I've always really enjoyed your music, the little pieces that you do. Like, here's a stylophone. Think that is this? What about this? Pow! Well, I think that probably wraps up our little chat there. I think we've covered a lot of ground there. Thank you ever so much for taking time out to speak to us about it. And and good luck with these kind of creative endeavors in the future.
Well, thank you for having me. I was very honored to be able to participate in this and contribute to it. And I really enjoyed everyone else's contributions. I guess I kind of thought it was going to be more synthesizer-y focused, but man, there was just such a wide breadth of contributions. And it was like old home week, sort of going through them. And I know all of the people, well, most of the people, and I'm like, ooh, this is really cool. So I've been contacting people and saying your song was awesome and this is so fun. And so thank you for having me on
Yay!
this.
Oh no, it's a real pleasure, and just to echo what you were saying there, I particularly like the variety on this album, and your song really, is a great example of that, idiosyncratic approach. So thank you very much for your wonderful contribution and for doing this little interview. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, well, thank you, guys.
Just remembered one question we always kind of throw in. How does the moment of inspiration work? Does it start with a sound? Do you sort of play something, think, oh yeah, that's great, and the tune will spring from that? Or do you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my God, I've got this tune in my head I need to record, and you kind of shout it into a phone or a recorder? Have you got an iPhone full of random recorded notes at midnight? How does it usually
As a
work?
matter of fact, I often dream music, and a lot of times I'll drag it out of the dream. I'll be enjoying it. I'll be like, I need this. This sounds good. And then as I wake up, I'll be like, okay, it's this, and this chord, this chord, this chord. And then I'll sometimes be able to deliver it to reality. And sometimes when I get it to reality, I'm like, oh, this is shit. Or I'll say, this is another song. This isn't my song. This is someone else's song. I'll recognize it. But in this case, the chorus melody, I literally brought out of a dream, and I wrote down the notes when I woke up in the morning, and I started to get the lyrics too. So this is really cool for me. That's almost never the case with a song where part of it was written in a dream.
Wow.
So that happened. And as far as inspiration goes, I just have this weird hypnotic thing. Like I go to this sort of inspiration state when I need to record music. And it's weird. It's the thing that people always talk about that seems to make people like sort of offended, where you say like, it came through me. And I mean, there's spiritual connotations that you could label it with, which I'm fine with, but a lot of times my inspiration phase, I just fall into it. And then there's this really cool thing that happens is when the song, like when I step back from it, I'm like, oh shit, I don't remember doing any of this. Yeah. I don't remember making this, and I love it, So
great.
And that happened a lot in this too. Like I just did what came in that mood.
That's cool. Though. This melody, the melody on your song, Mark, does have a quite it does have a feeling about it that is unusual, and sort of it does feel a little bit, off the track somehow. It is definitely in that realm. That's nice. It's nice it come from a dream. That's super smart. I love that.
My melody, I'm a terrible melody writer. It's just always been the case, because early on when I first was learning to write music, I thought that melodies were a sequence of notes that fit the chord progression. I mean, that's really, I was like, okay. And so any sequence of note that fits the chord progressions, and if you like it, that's even better, which is totally different than my concept of melody now, which I know melody is the human voice, and basically good melodies are notes that imply what a impassioned speaking voice would say. Yes. And that's a million years away from the thing that I have traditionally done, which was these notes fit. Okay, that's the melody. So, but in this case, I wanted it to have kind of, I didn't know what I was going to do for a chorus melody. And then luckily I dreamt it. So I'm like, okay, good. Phew. Don't have to worry about that. And then the verse melody is, it sounds kind of rambling to me, which kind of fits my intention. So I'm like, nice. Okay, I'll go with that.
So it's sort of like we're just taking gigantic leaps through. So what's that? Is that your clock? What makes that sound?
I was waiting for you to ask that. Yeah, I have my house. I was telling Andy, my house is full of grandfather clocks, and there is one foolishly in the studio right now, and it chimes every 15 minutes.
Every 15 minutes?
Yeah, and to be honest, that's another element of this recording. Like there were so many takes where I'm like, yeah. Oh, fuck, shut up. No. Oh God, it's 12. Stop. Fuck.
12.
So the
as well.
vocals, I'd be
12.
singing, I'd have this great take, and then there'd be chiming. I think there actually is chiming somewhere in a vocal take on that song, but
there's
it's
the
slow
Easter egg
enough
to
that it
find.
doesn't-
Just oh wow, okay, that's amazing.